Hi, Michelle Lost here, Stampin' Up demonstrator based in the UK. Today I'm sharing with you how we create these pretty hand stamped cards, all made using the Fancy Phrases stamp set. I'm calling this technique the vintage fabric technique. It reminds me of Cath Kidston, and I'm going to show you how to create your own. So we're using the Fancy Phrases set, and I'm using these two images from the stamp set. I love the sort of hand-drawn sketchy nature of them. The beauty of this set is that obviously it's an outline stamp, so you can colour the inside of the images, which is what you need. So if you're and also what's wonderful about this set is that it shows you the shading. So when you're colouring, it's showing you where the sketching is. That's where you should be going darker on your image with your darker blends, and then on the white sections, that's where you'll be going lighter. So let's get started. These are the different variants of cards that I've made. Using basically exactly the same stamp. I've used the So Sentimental stamp for the greeting, and I've used the Stitch So Sweetly dies, which coordinate to cut around them for all of my greetings. But there is a slight variance on the cards that I've made. So I don't know whether you can see, but on this one I have embossed it with the texture embossing folder, which has given it like a fabric quality. So if you really want to take it to the next level, then by all means you can use the texture embossing folder. I will also share all the products that I've used in these cards. And so just as an example, the black Memento ink pad is what I've used to stamp the flower on this piece of Whisper White thick cardstock. So all of these cards are made with Whisper White thick cardstock. This one was stamped in black Memento, so you can see we've got a darker image. This one was stamped with basic grey ink, so that's a level down from the black. And then this one was stamped with smoky slate. So it really depends on the look that you're going for. And then I have coloured the backgrounds. And you can use a multitude of blend colours to colour your background. I have used, where's the textured one that I just had? Here it is. So I have used Crumb Cake Light for the background of this one. I've used Grey Granite Light for the background of this one. I've used Smoky Slate Light for the background of this one, and this one is also Grey Granite. So just to show you them all together and how different effects you can get by using the different ink pads to stamp the flowers and the different blends to do the background. So let's get started. So I'm not going to actually, you can make it whatever size you wish. So whatever your mat and layer, so this would be your layer, this is your mat, and this is your card front. I've just cut them so that they will layer on top of one another for my card. So this is the piece I'm going to be working with, and this is Whisper White thick cardstock. Now I'm going to use the basic grey ink pad today to stamp my floral images from the Fancy Phrases. I'm not going to use the black Memento. Just remember when you're using alcohol markers that you need to use a dye-based ink. Otherwise, when you blend, you'll be blending the outline of your image too, which you don't want to do. So I've used Stampin' Up dye inks. That's giving a really dark image. So it's just going to give us it's going to mean that the pattern stands out on the background more, but it also means it's easier for you to see what to colour. So I would say that if you enjoy making this style of card, that you'll probably go on and make more, and you'll use different blends, and actually you'll start to see, you'll think, oh, I love that colour combination. And I found that I've loved colour combinations that I'm not normally drawn to. So I'm not normally an orange hue kind of a person, but actually my favourite card had blues and oranges on it. So that was quite interesting. So Now what I'm going to do is I have a piece of watercolour paper. That's just to protect my surface, because the alcohol marker pens will bleed through the paper slightly, and if you're doing it on a precious surface it might bleed into your background. So I just use a piece of watercolour paper which will absorb any excess ink. And now all you need to do is begin to colour. So I'm going to focus on Calypso Coral, light and dark, and Seaside Spray, light and dark. I'm going to do my roses in Seaside Spray, and I'm going to do these are the rose images. That's the daisy image. So there's a rose, and then these are the daisies. Now, what I want to explain before I get started, because I will speed up the colouring process, is that work on one area at a time. Don't go working on colouring all the roses, because these are alcohol markers, the ink stays wet and will blend for a certain amount of time. But if you colour all of the sheet and let it dry, you're going to find it's not going to blend. Having said that, I'm not really blending these images. The images are quite small to be blending. I don't want to spend too much time, and I also am creating a fabric effect, so I'm not really looking for a perfectly coloured representation of a rose. So just to show you here, I have left some white space. That isn't white ink added afterwards. That is white space on the card, which is showing the white background. So it's really important. I think it gives a really nice effect if you just leave some white. So let's get started. I start with my dark, and for speed I use the biggest tip. So I'm going to colour on the rose where the shading is, because the stamp itself is telling me where the shadow is on that image. So I've very quickly coloured that in. You can take as long as you wish. I have left some white space, which just looks like I've forgotten to colour it, but when we colour the background, I promise you that it will be more cohesive and come together. So the only final colour that I would use is the Mango Melody Dark, and I'm going to use that to just colour my flower centres. You can go in and do this afterwards. You can choose any colour you wish for your flower centres. I just like the pop of yellow. If you find that the colouring you've done is too bright and you want to take it down, you can always use your colour lifter to go over the top of it to take some of the colour, to move some of the colour and just to tone it down. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my grey, that's the smoky slate. I need my grey granite. So I've got my light grey granite, and I'm actually going to colour in the background. Now I will use the brush tip, and I will work pretty quickly, and I'm going to colour in circles, and I'm going to move across the paper until I've done the whole sheet. What I don't want you to do is use wide strokes, because you'll end up seeing it. You'll see the strokes in the background colour and it doesn't look very good. And also what I don't want you to do is sort of colour an area and then colour another area. What you're going to do is you're going to colour, and as you move and keep hitting the line that you've coloured, it's going to flow into each other and it won't have that harsh line. So I'll show you what I mean. So I'm not going to worry about going over, certainly in this small detail. I don't want to cover up any of the white space that I've left on the flowers, but it's really not the end of the world if I go over any of the flower stamp or any of the small images. The light grey granite is such a light colour, it's not going to cause too much of an issue. So I'm going around it, but you don't want to leave any white space around the image. The only white space will be where you've intentionally left it on the flowers. So you can see I'm going in circular motion, and of course every time I go in an area I'm touching a line of colour that I've already coloured. And if this wasn't alcohol markers and if this wasn't wet, the ink wasn't still wet and blending, then you'd end up with a harsh line, and you'll see where you've coloured one section and where it's sort of double strength. So it's very important to keep moving, to be relatively quick, and to move down your paper rather than scatter yourself all over the paper, perhaps doing your corners first, or around the detail, around the sort of edge of the stamp. So it's just very important that you work quickly and smoothly, and you'll see that the colours sort of blends into itself and just takes away those harsh lines. You could add 2 shades of grey granite if you wished, the light and the dark, and you could actually create some shading around the image and go darker around the image if you wish. It depends how much time you have, how much colouring how much you love colouring, and the type of personality you are. I'm a quick stamper, I'm an impatient stamper, so I don't like projects that take too long to do. So I don't know that it means I'm a quick stamper. I think it means I'm a busy person and I just don't have a lot of time to do everything perhaps in the way that I would normally, or would love to in a perfect world. So again, don't go too big with your circles. There is a tendency to want to just sort of to colour in the background because you're covering in a big area, but don't resist temptation. And don't forget, you can go back. See, I just did it there. Just did what I told you not to do. You can go back and add brighter colour, take colour down using the colour lifter. You can really, this isn't your finished image. This is just about getting the ink down on the card while it's wet, to see what your image looks like. And what you'll find is there will be imperfections. We're colouring a large area here. It's not all going to be even and perfect, so there are going to be imperfections. So that's a little trick. That's where you're going to stick your sentiment. So I purposefully chose the So Sentimental stamp set because the greetings were large. And for that means with the Stitch So Sweetly dies that coordinate with them, they also create a large die cut, which means I can cover quite a large area of this card, which means if I have made any mistakes or there's an area that I don't like, so I don't really like that area, it means I can stick my greeting over it. So we'll review that at the end. That might not be the worst part. There may be another bit that I don't like more. So yeah. Okay, so that's my background coloured in. Take a look at it, see if there's areas that you want to change or improve. I find that I like that white area. It might to you look like you've forgotten to colour a part. If you dislike it, colour the whole image in, whatever suits you. So if you've got a stamped image where there's a gap, or there's a mistake or a boo-boo or an area that you don't like, that is going to be exactly where my greeting goes. So that's pretty much it. If I wanted to take it to the next level, I could emboss it with the textured embossing folder like I have done on this one, which will take it to another level. If you are happy with how it is, what you're going to do is you're going to mount it onto your matte layer, and like that. So I'll do that quickly for you. I've added a detail, a linen thread detail. You may want to, you may not want to, but I'll show you a little tip which I find useful. especially if you're a frugal crafter and don't want to use up lots of your supplies, you might like this one. So to add the linen thread, what I do is I decide where my greeting's going to go. My greeting's going to go there. And then I want my linen thread to come through the centre part of this panel here. So if I line up on my grid paper, this line here, and I have my card perfectly straight on my grid paper, what I can do is I can, with a pencil, mark the line on both sides. So if I mark it there and I mark it there, what I do now is, using a hole punch, I'm going to use a crocodile. I'm just going to punch a semicircle here on this side and one on this side, and then a bit of double-sided tape just either side of the little semicircle I've punched on the reverse. And rather than wrapping around linen thread and tying it in a bow, I find that that can, the linen thread can, when I try and tie the bow, can be a bit slack. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to position it and stick that on the back. So I've cut 3 lengths that are slightly longer than my card, so I'm not going all the way round. Therefore, if you're frugal, that's good. You're not using too much of your linen thread. So just get that stuck in place. And then what I do is just be careful, because obviously if I stick it down on my grid paper, the extra glue is going to stick it to my grid paper. So if I just do this, just it'll hold it. I've then got a double layer of linen thread, and I'm going to tie a bow. So if I tuck that underneath, I can then tie my bow. It means that my linen thread isn't, sometimes when you go to tie a bow, you just can't get it taut when you're pulling it tight. So I find that if I do a bow like this on here, tricky part is knowing which are my ends and which is my bow. Bring it down until I'm happy with the size of the bow. Trim off my ends. Very curly because it's on a spool now, the linen thread. But the beauty of that is you can move your bow backwards and forwards to wherever you want it. So when I get my dimensionals to stick this down, I'm going to use all my backing pieces. I hope that you use your backing pieces. I love it when I fill up, empty a sheet of dimensionals. Such a satisfying feeling. So there we go, edge pieces of my dimensionals, peel those off and then pop that on my card front. Decide which side do I want my bow to be. I think I'm going to go this side. I'm going to stick that down centrally. Remember, I positioned my linen thread so that it was central on my little frame, so that's going to show me where to stick it. And then I can just move my bow in and around to be exactly where I want it to be on my card. And then the final step is going to be adding glue to the back. If you want to raise this up on dimensionals, of course you can. I'm going to trim off that little bit of linen thread. Don't need that on the background. And then stick that on my card front. And the final flourish is I've used the epoxy dots, and you can colour them in a coordinating colour from the card. So if I was to just colour them with alcohol blends, that is a permanent colour. It stays wet for a minute or two, so just be careful when you're lifting them off because you'll get it all over your fingers unless you want to leave them to dry for a minute or two. And then that just means that when you stick that down, so we'll pop one here. Just be careful of your getting them all over your fingers. It stays on the little sheet there, and that's where you pick it up from on your fingers, look. So just be careful, because you'll then do some more crafting and then you'll have it everywhere. And then maybe just here. And that's it. It didn't take long at all. They look so different in different colours. Every time you do it, you can try a different colour or a different shade, and you'll get a different effect each time. So I hope you'll give it a try. I've listed all the products that I've used in the description part of the video. So thanks for watching today. I really appreciate your support. Thank you.